I don't think it was like leaked. It's just public knowledge because these companies would keep trading with the corporations.
Look, the United States leverage is only if you're using dollars. China's using renminbi. China's not using US dollars. That's not its principal means of transaction. And the countries it's dealing with in terms of trade, Brazil, they're using local currencies. They're not using US dollars. For those sanctions to have a bite, you've got to use US dollars and go through US banks and use SWIFT. They're not using it. And yes, Iran's been under sanctions, but compared to 2015, these sanctions are nothing compared to 2015. In 2015, Iran didn't have alternatives. They didn't have Russia and China saying to the West, screw you, we're not following your sanction regime. That's exactly what Russia and China have now said. They said it last September. Their position hasn't changed. The United States does not have the economic leverage it once had where it could enforce this. And that's because China has set up CIPS. 100 different countries have signed up for that. And Iran is selling its goods in local currency, not in dollars. And that goes back to they used to use UAE. They're not using UAE anymore, not for major transactions at least. So
the US dollar is used by 45. So 45 of Chinese transactions involve the US dollar today. 50% use the renminbi, 40 to 45 use the US dollar, and 5 to 7% use the euro. I still think that China's in a position now where they are building an alternative, when you've talked about it, the CIPS, to the SWIFT. And it's still very small, but it's a long-term insurance policy to the SWIFT because the US has shown over the years that they'll weaponize the hegemony they have of global trade. But it's not ready yet. And I think China, my position on what China would do and whether they'll abide by the sanctions is they prefer not to. But if the goal by the Americans is to use economic warfare to topple the Iranian government, to completely topple the government, regime change, I think the Chinese will be a lot stricter on not abiding by the sanctions. I think they won't abide by them because that's an objective that harms Chinese interests in the region. If the US goal with these sanctions is to get a concession from Iran, for example, don't charge 2 to 3% fee on what goes through the Strait of Hormuz.
No.
Charge a 1% fee. So if it's just a negotiating tactic.
Bullshit.
Which one?
It's just they're not going to do the sanctions to get concessions from Iran. Are you kidding me? The United States wants to destroy Iran. They're not interested in preserving Iran's independence. They're not interested in allowing Iran's Islamic Republic continue to rule. The United States wants to destroy it. And the United States can't. And that's what they're going to find out. Because China and Russia, they also signed the Security Cooperation Agreement with Iran. And the Chinese and Russians actually take those agreements seriously. And if you think for a minute that China is going to sell out Iran to cater favor with the United States, are you kidding me? They understand. The United States hates the Chinese.
Yeah. So if the goal is to topple the Iranian government, then I don't think the Chinese will play ball because they don't want to see the Iranian government toppled or Iran destroyed as a country. If the goal, so I know you said that you don't think that's the goal. I think Trump is just trying to get concessions so he can walk away and get embarrassed the least. All about the struggle with the Strait of Hormuz that we've discussed before. I think they would like to see the Iranian government topple and Iran break down as a nation. They would like that. But it's no longer an objective. I think that ship has sailed. They failed at that goal. I could be wrong. It could still be part of the plan.
What do you base that on that you think that they've shifted from that? I haven't seen a single public expression by them suggesting any kind of a way to conciliate with Iran. In fact, Trump's been quite clear. We're done talking.
Yeah, but he said, so even in his last post, he said, I'm the only president that's given Iran a deal. He's talked about Mujtaba Khamenei being a good guy. He's talked about the Iranian government being good people when he was trying to negotiate a deal. So he's changed from this is an evil regime that we're going to topple to started saying, good things, bad things, depending on the day and what's happening with the negotiations. But I kind of dismiss what Trump says. I think, it's just, it's too difficult to read what the objective is of the administration based on Trump's posts for the day. I just think that this operation failed so miserably that at least in the short to medium term, the goal of regime change, obviously it could still be there and they could still be pursuing it. And a lot of people believe that it would just be crazy, beyond crazy if that's still the goal. The US economy has got such bigger problems to solve. You got the yen crisis, you got the interest rates at home, you got the deficit. You got China's growth, got the shipbuilding capacity, got the issues within the military. The list goes on and on and on. All these the energy problems they face back home. So there's all these issues that they face that they need to put their attention towards. That they tried this Iran war. They tried to topple the regime similar to Venezuela. They messed up. They're trying to get out of it, but they just can't go back to the status quo before February 28th, which is what they're trying to achieve.
Besson just gave it away in that comment you played. They fully expected once they made this announcement, price of oil would fall. And as the price of oil falls, that hurts Iran. And if you think that they've got an effective blockade of Iran, think again. The United States does not have enough ships deployed in the Indian and Ocean and the Arabian Sea to stop all Iranian tankers coming out. They don't have
Larry, you missed the breaking news yesterday. Axios said there's 10 to 15 million barrels a day going through.
Yeah, Barack Ravid is out. Somebody needs to check, see if he's got a habit with hallucinogenic substances.
There's more oil flowing now than before the war.
Okay, then if that's the case, why do you need to sanction Iran?
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, the contradictions in this are so stark. Go to Sonar 21. You obviously do not read what I write.
Sonar 20. I speak to you every day. I get the privilege of hearing it directly from you every day.
But I laid it out last night. I laid it out in a very detailed article.
The confession of in the escalation.
Yes.
Is if Iran is beaten and Hormuz is ours, why the unprecedented sanctions? It's good for some MAGA supporters, the MAGA cult guys, to read this.
No, but the cultists, they don't care about facts. They're locked into a narrative. But and then the article I had the night before was on the claim that Iran's the number one sponsor of terrorism. Absolutely not true. Not true, not by my opinion, by the data collected by both the State Department's Office of Bureau of Counterterrorism. The data is actually collected by the National Counterterrorism Center and then published by the State Department that publishes it, as well as a French institute. They all, they've all got the same information, which is really over the last 24 years. The 95% of the terrorism has been carried out by these Sunni extremist groups, funded by the Gulf Arabs and funded by the United States. And you're going, gee, why would the United States fund these Sunni extremists that we accuse of attacking us in 9/11? Well, when you're funding them because you want them to attack Iran, which they have been, that's one way to try to further weaken Iran. That's what helps explain this.
Yeah, I can see the piece here. The data doesn't support the charge. Iran and the number one sponsor of terrorism claim. Look, you've been busy. 2 stories on the 18th of August. You usually do a piece a day.
Well, the one may have been.
Wrong date. Yeah, that's the 19th. Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, I do about one of them a day.
Is meant to be. Yeah, exactly. Because you skipped you skipped the 19th. You skipped yesterday, and you did 2 on the 18th.
So all of your viewers go to sonar21.com. It's free, no charge.
Sonar's SONAR 21.com.
And if you want to make a contribution, you can, but there's no obligation.
Oh, there it is. Patreon. Where you don't accept crypto?
Yeah, I do. I
Larry.
don't know. Oh, I
You're
haven't.
using the SWIFT system. You're using PayPal. You're using the SWIFT system. That's a good
Yeah,
joke. Oh, I like myself now.
I'd use SIPS if I could.
Yeah, I know.
But
Hopefully soon. Payshoot is maybe crypto. So I'll tell you one more point. I'm just looking at Payshoot. I'll tell you one more point on the sanctions, and then we'll go through the big news of the day, which is what's happening in Turkey. And I'm sure no one's told you yet. I think that's we'll get to it in a second. That's pretty significant. On the sanctions, my biggest concern. So a position on whether the sanctions will work. I'm vehemently against war. I've been saying for so long now that the military action won't work. Blah blah blah. It's going to fail. They're going to stop, etc. But in terms of economic warfare, I'm against the strategy. There was a report done not long ago about the human cost to sanctions over the last few decades. It's heartbreaking. The numbers are heartbreaking. I'm against that, and I've seen how much Iran has suffered for so many decades. Now, putting that aside, on whether it will work, I have no opinion on whether it will work. But my bigger concern, I was telling Philip earlier, is the damage this will do to the US dollar and the trust in the US system. Because it's again been weaponized. It was weaponized against Iran in 2015, weaponized against Ukraine in 2022, and weaponized again against Iran now. Pretty extreme level. They want to sanction any country that does business with Iran. And he started listing all the things that are included.
You meant weaponized against Russia, not Ukraine.
Weaponized against Russia, yeah. And now again, weaponized against Iran. Oh, and by the way, you remember how yesterday you were talking about how the missile attack against the UAE could have been a false flag? And I was on the camp of I don't think it was. I still don't think it was, but I'm leaning more towards your position because if you look at the timing of it, one day the UAE conveniently cuts all trade with Iran because of a missile attack, which I still think there was, by the way. But it's instead of 80% likely or 70, I'm down at 55, 60. A day later, there's sanctions where all countries have to stop doing business with Iran anyway. So the UAE would have had to abide by the sanctions. So just the timing of it was a bit odd.
Yeah.
Now, the big story I want to get your thoughts on is something that it came in the last hour. According to Israel Hayom, Israel has. So now let's go in order. Okay, Netanyahu held an emergency meeting today, an emergency security cabinet meeting with defense and intelligence chiefs to discuss Turkey, according to I-24. That comes just for context for anyone that was living under the rock the last 48 hours. 2 days ago, Israel struck a base, an airport, an airfield in Syria that the Turkish visited a few days beforehand and were planning to move military assets there, allegedly. So they struck their airfield. They struck the strip itself. The airstrip itself didn't cause much damage to any equipment there. There's reports that they struck a Turkish military equipment, but that's unconfirmed. There's also claims that a Turkish military personnel died. I don't think that's the case. So that happened. So now there's a security meeting that is going on, that went on already. According to I-24 and Yediot, Israeli intelligence has information that Turkey is preparing to send offensive and defensive weapons to Syria, including advanced air defense systems. And the reason this is very significant is I want to show a map to the audience on why this is such an important strategic interest for the Israelis beyond the fact that it's on their border. If you can show that image I just sent you, Stephanie, the Syrian airspace is used regularly by the Israelis, especially when it comes to strike against Iran. There's that base, in northern Israel, just under that, around that purple area. And that purple area is where Israel invaded Syria. But now all that area, the Syrian area, if the air defenses, the Turkish air defenses are sent to Syria, the Syrian airspace can now no longer be used by Israel. Obviously, you have to go through Jordan. So that makes any strikes on Iran a lot more difficult. And the last piece of news, Larry, is so that's according to I-24 and Yediot. Turkey is planning to send military equipment to Syria, which wouldn't surprise me. And the last one is according to also Israel Hayom. So all this is coming out of Israeli media. So obviously you could interpret
Yeah.
it for the audience. You could interpret it as you wish. Israeli Hayom reports that Israel has studied how NATO's Article 5 operates and argues that Israeli strikes on Turkish forces deployed abroad would not necessarily trigger NATO intervention. Article 5 protects Turkish territory but does not automatically extend to Turkish troops stationed in Syria or northern Cyprus.
Yeah. Well, if the Turks were counting on Article 5 for NATO to come to their assistance in the event of a war with Iran, I said before, they're deluding themselves. Europe, I mean, to enact Article 5, you got to get the legislatures to say, yeah, we're going to send our troops to fight with Turkey. We're not going to do that. I mean, the good news about this is maybe this will wake the Turks up that they've been used as just a bunch of, you know, they're the bitch of NATO.
NATO did put a statement yesterday. It says it prepared a deal. It is prepared to deal with any threat against its member states, emphasizing that NATO air defenses have already intercepted Iranian ballistic missiles on 4 occasions headed to Turkey. So a lot of people are interpreting that statement by NATO as an indicator that they will support Turkey.
Yeah, only against Iran, not against Israel.
They are bad goyim.
I don't know. They would say we're good goyim. We're defending our area of interest. I mean, what gives the right of Israel to fly unfettered into foreign territory of Syria and bomb whoever the hell it wants?
Exactly. That pisses me off. That way of operating is one of the biggest problems in the region. Just randomly flying into the territory. Like they gave a warning to the Syrian intelligence. Fine, they could do that. They could send warnings. They could send. They don't send delegations to Syria, but sanctions is okay. They could start sanctioning Syria. Not that it changes anything. Israel can't sanction anybody. They're not the US. But what I mean is they could do all these different things. But just to go in there, fly a fighter jet and bomb their airstrip, like just the audacity of it pisses me off. Like they bombed in that same day, they bombed Lebanon. They're bombing Lebanon on a daily basis. They're still trying to capture that hill. And they bombed Gaza, obviously. But just to go into Syria and bomb the airstrip is just so wrong. They could try to increase their influence. I understand. They could try to work with the government. They could try to support militias. I'm against it. But I understand that these countries do that across the region. But just to randomly fly a fighter jet and bomb the airstrip, that kind of rules. The way they engage with any threats needs to change, and hopefully will change after this war. That new reality, the new security infrastructure in the region would force Israel to change. Do you think Turkey would end up sending military assets to Syria?
Yeah, I do.
That's
It's
going to be interesting.
It's their area of influence.
Yeah, Syria was part of the Ottoman Empire a few decades ago, 100 years ago. So, are you worried about a clash between the two?
I'm not worried about it. I'm just saying if Israel's stupid enough to do that, that Turkey's got the military power to really, make Israel pay.
Well, they've got the alliance with Pakistan and Saudi as well.
Yeah. The last thing that Israel is in a position to do is to expand the war, fight a 3, 4, 5 front war. Hell, the United States can't do that. Israel certainly can't. And again, the key remember, if Turkey pulls the plug on the oil, Israel has got some problems.
Yeah, the oil that comes from Azerbaijan. Also, Eisenkot, the guy that's most likely to become Israel's new prime minister, he advocates. I think I told you this last time. He's also hawkish. They're all hawkish, so don't expect a pacifist in office that would go shake hands with al-Shara and Erdogan. But he's one that criticizes Israeli policy of overstretching their military, and he's a supporter of quick, effective and quick military operations to achieve an objective and pull out, and not long wars. So it's an improvement from the existing prime minister.
Now, what might those objectives be?
You got to ask him. I would say, like, all right, so let's say Turkey delivers military assets. What he would aim to do is to try to degrade Syria's capabilities or maybe bomb these military assets while avoiding a direct confrontation with Turkey. Now, I know they so sound contradictory, but I'm trying to
Yeah.
explain how he would differ from Netanyahu. Netanyahu's goal would be like, I'm going to bomb these military assets that are being delivered by Turkey, and I don't care if I get into war with Turkey. If anything, it's a good thing for me because I'll be in office for longer. That would be Netanyahu. This guy will be like, I will bomb these military assets that Turkey is delivering, those air defense batteries that Turkey is delivering to Syria, but I'll do it in a way to try to my best of my abilities not to get into a war with Turkey. So how you interpret that and how these bombing campaigns, or he may decide at the end of the day not to bomb them to avoid getting into war with Turkey. So that's where one could be a tiny bit more optimistic if Eisenkot wins the prime minister's office.
Yeah,
What's that
I
smirk
think
for, Larry? What's that smirk for, Larry?
I think, as you said at the outset, he may be, quote, on the left, but substantive in terms of policy of Israel stopping its aggression against other countries. You know, he's on the same sheet of music that Bibi Netanyahu
He's not on the left.
is.
Don't get too excited. He's not even on the left. He's not even on the left. He's hawkish. Like anyone on the left would not even be on the ballot box. Like the left are completely, what is it called? There's a term for it. Have their balls cut off. What's it? Sorry, I have to be crude. What's it called? Emancipated?
No,
Is that the term?
emasculated.
Emasculated.
Emancipated means you've been freed from slavery to vote.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, that one would apply as well. They've been emancipated and what is it? Emasculated. There we go.
Emasculated.
They've been completely emasculated in Israel, the left. So that's on the Turkish front. We've covered the economic D-Day that Trump has announced against Iran. Anything else that's interesting that you saw today? The Houthis have said they've attacked Saudi, drones targeting Narjan airport and the Aramco facility. Haven't gotten any reports of explosions or damage, but doesn't mean that hasn't happened.
No, I think the really big news that's going to be sort of driving events is what happened with the sell-off by both China and Japan of treasury bills today, because that completely blows up Scott Bessent's plan to, he thought he had this thing wired, and yeah, we'll get this under control. He's lost control of the narrative now, and he's trying desperately to retain control, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult.
And how do you think Iran would retaliate to the sanctions? Because we've talked before how they've warned that if the blockade continues, they'll be the ones to initiate military strikes. That was a warning that came in a couple of weeks ago. Now we've got the blockade remains, further sanctions, pretty severe sanctions being implemented on Iran, the worst ever, and Lebanon's getting bombed on a daily basis. So there's a lot of red lines being crossed against Iran.
Well, I think probably maybe the first thing we'd see is Hezbollah, who's been strangely quiet. If Hezbollah renews its offensive in a massive way, that could be one indicator of, again, Iran would use them as a proxy. I mean, Hezbollah's got its own reasons for retaliating, but then, as you read yesterday, the Israelis said any attack by Hezbollah will be viewed as that they'll then attack Iran. But then he gets back to the issue: how are they going to do it?
That was just sorry. I didn't explain it yesterday. That was Naftali Bennett, so the guy running for prime minister. Yeah. So he has no authority. I think he's just trying to get votes. Right. So I don't think the Israeli position. They haven't officially said they'll attack Iran if Hezbollah attacks. I don't think they.
Well, even if they wanted, let's say that even if they wanted to, I said they still got some logistical obstacles. Like, how do they get there? Are they going to overfly? I don't see Saudi Arabia giving them the green light. Yeah, you can overfly our territory and bomb whoever you want.
They used the cruise missiles last time. Remember that attack? The last time they attacked Iran, they fired those cruise missiles as well as the fighter jets without American support. So that the Americans didn't use American refueling aircraft. If you remember that last attack, But yeah, their attacks will be a lot more limited in scope because they can't have as many sorties as we've discussed before because they have a lot less
Correct.
refueling aircraft. Cool. What's your piece tomorrow on Sonar 21? Did you write today's one? Today's one's the one you
No,
told me about, yeah? Or that was yesterday?
not yet. I write it later tonight. So,
what are you writing tonight?
Probably about this diesel shortage that is gripping the world now. That's not going away anytime soon, and so the lack of diesel is really it's going to be a major economic problem for the world. And the only way that gets fixed is that ultimately you got to get the Strait of Hormuz open, you got to get Iranian oil flowing completely unfettered again. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. And the other thing that's lurking out there, I don't have a good handle on it yet, but two different people I've talked to who do, with respect to the derivatives market, that's what's going to blow up the world financial system. The derivative market it's now where this past market manipulation and drawing down on strategic petroleum reserves has given the derivatives some security. They've lost that security now. So that's another issue that's going to percolate.